Hello there. So, I rewatched The Amazing Spider-Man for the first time after a few years earlier today at the time of this writing. And it's bad. Really bad. And you know, the weirdest part is that I don't even remember it being this bad. What the hell was I thinking? I mean, yeah, there were a few things that bothered me about the movie the first time I saw it in 2012, but holy shit, this was worse than I thought. 2012, when we all thought the world was going to end. Turns out we were 8 years too early. Where am I even supposed to start with this movie? There's just so much that doesn't work. The aesthetic, the acting, the music, the screenplay, the pacing. You know what? I'll start with what works. And it's a short list. I can't even really say that this works, just that while this movie's Spider-Man suit is hated by a lot of people, it doesn't really bother me. Martin Sheen is good, I guess, as Ben Parker. And you know, that scene where Spider-Man lends his mask to that kid he's trying to save on that bridge, I think is pretty good. And I think that's it. And I'm probably being generous. Perhaps we should start with the script, written by James Vanderbilt, Alvin Sargent, and Steve Kloves. Before getting into specifics, the movie is full of underdeveloped characters, plotlines simply disappear, and it rehashes story beats already done in 2002 Spider-Man. That's a big problem, by the way. The Amazing Spider-Man was released 5 years after Spider-Man 3. This was probably too soon for anyone to accept a new version of Spider-Man, but Sony had to put out a new movie soon or lose the rights to Marvel. And we all know how that turned out. In fact, what does this movie rehash from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man? Uncle Ben's death, fighting a green villain, the spider bite, a bridge scene where Spider-Man has to save a group of kids or a single kid, a funeral scene at the end. And I'm aware that these are not uncommon tropes within the superhero genre, but they were already done perfectly in the 2002 movie. So, if you can't do it better, why redo it at all? There's also a few weird little things scattered across the movie. Spider-Man leaves his name on his camera, which he brought with him to the lizard's lair. Peter throws a ball and misshapes a goalpost. Irfan Khan's character just disappears from the movie. The first time Spider-Man swings through the air, he lands in a cafe. And no one is around to see this. In New York. In New York! There are a few night scenes where Spider-Man or another character are walking through the deserted streets of New York. Where is everybody? I've never been to New York, but am I not to understand that it's a very busy city? Peter tries to track down his uncle's killer, and then stops. What for? Oh, and Peter promises Gwen's dad that he'll stay away from her to keep her safe, and then promises to Gwen to break that promise. That was the man's dying wish. Peter also makes web shooters, and there is nothing in the movie that shows he is capable of that kind of ingenuity. He doesn't even seem especially intelligent in this version. The formula that the villain needs for his transformation wasn't even written by Peter, but by his father. Another thing that hurts the movie is the pacing. The movie is 2 hours and 16 minutes long. It takes roughly 55 minutes for Peter to don his Spider-Man suit, and 1 hour and 30 minutes, I think, who cares, for us to get our first proper fight scene. It did have one of the best Stan Lee cameos though, so I'll give the movie credit there. James Horner was a great film composer in his time, but while his musical compositions were fine as compositions, in this movie they were used rather poorly. Scenes that are shot as scary and tense are given music that's inspirational and triumphant, and I'm not sure if this was intentional on the part of Horner or the studios, but a few tracks sound suspiciously similar to Danny Elfman's themes from Raimi's Spider-Man. I mean, if it ain't broke right. Let's talk about the acting. Andrew Garfield is a good actor, and I can see him doing a good job as Spider-Man, but he does not work here. In his defense, I don't think it's his fault. His acting seems awkward, but not in a way that should be expected from a Peter Parker performance, but rather as an indication of improper direction. He actually seems lost on set sometimes. Emma Stone is here. I used to think that the romance here was better than in the Raimi movies, but now I'm not so sure. The Lizard is a poor villain. A scientist that turns himself into a monster should be easy to do well, and we see a little bit of that during the fight scene in this school. The Lizard examines some chemicals in a science class, and then mixes them together to create an explosive. That should be his character, a monster-mad scientist. A fusion of brute strength, scientific knowledge, and madness. But instead, we get, I don't even understand what. Maybe if he was more over the top like Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, he'd be better. The Amazing Spider-Man is false advertisement. You say that you're amazing, and you most certainly are not. Don't watch it. Not if you're a fan of superheroes. Not if you're a fan of Spider-Man. Not if you're a fan of Marvel. Not even if you're a fan of bad movies. It's simply too damn dull.